What's up, everybody? This is Karak with ACG, and welcome to a late November, actually, podcast Q&A. I apologize for that, but you know what? You guys come here to watch the reviews mostly. Podcasts are just sugar on the cupcake. So when it comes down to it, sometimes those will get delayed when I have a bunch of games, which I did here. I had I have four actually huge games. One of them I haven't even posted a review for. So I get that people want these, but I apologize. Sometimes I have to move them back. So we're just going to jump straight on in. As always, these are just basic questions that people on Facebook and Twitter and so forth have asked. Nordberg, do you ever sleep? I do. It's just far less. I would say when I was about 18. I remember pretty much the time period where I was getting 8 to 10, especially, a teen going through the high school years kind of stuff. And then something just happened. And all of a sudden, I was waking up earlier and earlier and going to sleep later and later. And it's stuck around 4 hours normally, 4 to 5, and then goes as high as, 8 or 9 some other days. It's not catching up on sleep because you really can't do that. It's just one of those things where I just don't require as much as a lot of people. I'm high energy, so it helps the channel. But I get that it is weird for some people to be on Twitter and they go to bed and wake up, and I've been posting all through the night and then post all through the day again. And people are like, what is going on with this guy? It is not the cocaine that I joke about. It is not Scarface. Tech says, record yourself doing a starting of a review for Bully. Oh, while on camera. Tech says, record yourself doing a starting of a review for Bully while on camera. There's always an age of disbelief. There's always somebody thinking that, these things are impossible. Let me see here. Bully shouldn't be too hard. Let's see the Academy's name, because I've played this so much. Bully's one of those games that almost requires a sequel. Let's see. Luckily, even though I haven't played it recently, I played it enough. I think I'm just going to go for it and hope. Without the ability, I don't want to pause the video, and without the ability to go and study, I may get a name wrong. I think I know the Academy's name, but I keep calling it Bull Sword, and for some reason my brain is telling me that isn't right. But what's up, everybody? This is Karak with ACG, and it's my continuing open school adventure to bring you... Let's start that again. What's up, everybody? This is Karak with ACG, and it's my continuing open mission adventure to bring you reviews that aren't 2 minutes long or filled with sponsored bullshit. Today's treatise on teen testosterone hijinks is the open school adventure game known as Bully for the PS3, PS4, I think, Xbox One, pretty much every single game ever. 1 part coming of age story, 1 part lack of maturity mayhem. Bully tells the tale of Jimmy Hopkins, aka the skeleton-dressed hooligan, on his adventures through the anarchy of Bullsworth Academy. I got it right. Brought to you by the developers of the coolest poker simulator ever, Red Dead Redemption, and of course, that is Rockstar. As always, if you like the video, maybe subscribe. So here's my review for Bully. The world's worst first kiss, ISIS chemistry class wet dreams, and hanging out with that asshole in high school that was cool just because you had to. Graphics start first. Yeah, that was pretty good for a random. I haven't played it much. I think it's Jimmy Hopkins, but anyway, there you go. Turdburgle says, explain your eyes. What happened? Is this too personal? Sorry, I still love you, and I apologize. No, it's not too personal. So basically what happened was a couple years ago, a couple years now, I walked out on my deck. I was hanging out with somebody. Actually, it was my wife at that time, so I don't mean I was hanging out with. I was actually married to her, and we were out on the deck, and I said, man, it's really foggy today. And my wife said, what are you talking about? It's not foggy at all. So I walked into the bathroom and I checked my eyes because I didn't have anything on at the time, like contacts or glasses. I had worn glasses for faraway vision at that time. And I could actually see the cataracts, just like a movie, or just, the white opaque weirdness that went on. I was quite freaked out by that because other than, having an issue seeing long distances, I'd never had any problems. So I went into the doctor, and the doctor and I both were like, we have no clue what's going on. Most likely they are caused by physical injury. Now, I've had a history, MMA, boxing, training classes, occasional real fights and sparring, some stuff. I've done some crazy stuff when I was younger. That kind of thing is possible that it could happen. And it does happen, but it's just very rare that they're physically induced like this. There's no chemical involved. There was nothing spilled in my eyes or anything. So we had those surgeries done quite quickly. And what happens is they remove the UV filter. A real lens has UV filter because, of course, evolution has put that in place. And they don't in the lenses they put in your eyes. So I have to really be careful, number one, of UV light on my eyes. That's actually very bad and can damage it. But additionally, they're a little bit clearer than your lens might be. And so what happens is there's a situation where bright lights, stuff like that, can just be a little bit discomforting after long periods of time. I'm okay today because it's at 8:30 or 9 in the morning and it's barely bright outside, and I haven't been, I've been up for about 5 hours, but I haven't seen a ton of bright lights or anything like that. So it hasn't been such an issue. You will definitely see me wear sunglasses because I'm sure that's what the question is about. You'll see me wear sunglasses at later times, especially if I've been sitting in front of cameras for a long time. But thanks for asking. There's nothing wrong with that. Champ says, where do babies come from? Well, it's actually an epic story. There's a cosmic engine. No, man, I don't know. Or I do know. And fact of, if you're on this channel and you don't know that, man, I don't know how you got here, but boy, wrong place to be because there's a lot of jokes about it. Reef Gamble says, what games haven't had a sequel that you want to have one? Well, Bully. Yeah, Bully is one of those games where I absolutely would love to see a sequel to it. I absolutely think that there is a sequel that they could do or sequels that they could do. But, we'll probably never see it. Honestly, I'm just going to be honest and say, L.A. Noire. I loved L.A. Noire. I know that it's got its weaknesses. People always assume that you can't love something that has problems. But, it's just, nothing would work in life if that's the way it worked. And so I really liked a lot of L.A. Noire. I would love to see that, that system in place again. The detectiveness of it was just so fantastic. It wasn't the best open world, even though they tried to go halfway there. But overall, as a title, I would love to see that sequel. Kyle says, do you feel more console games will use mods like Fallout 4? So yeah, this is something I actually talked about on multiple podcasts. So hopefully you've seen those podcasts. Kevin, it doesn't sound like maybe he has, or maybe he wants me to talk about it in this podcast. I'm not quite sure. Not only do I think it'll happen more, if I were Microsoft, especially even though Sony has now got their mods working and stuff like that, if I were Microsoft, I would certainly go out and try to court as many people to try to get past whatever difficult, or try to not get past, but take advantage of whatever difficulty Sony may have on their side. It's just one of those situations where, if you have something they don't, or something works better on your system, whether it be graphically, you up the resolution a little bit to maybe 1080p versus 900 on the Xbox One. I would be out there talking to everybody if I ran Microsoft, and I'd be like, let's put mods in your fucking game. Let's hook us all up to Mod Nexus or whatever. I think mods in games are great. I think console mods are great. I think that it absolutely really increases the usefulness, the time played, it absolutely makes it worth more. And, some people have actually asked me, will I review a game at a higher rating that has mods? And that is going to be a question that I will have to come to grips with soon. It'll be something where I will really have to look at that and say, how does that affect its initial price, especially if those mods are up and running day one. Let's see. Kevin also asks, you gonna look at Survival Evolved or no? Oh, for the PS4. Survival Evolved for the PS4 or no? I try to cover newer games, and I cover the older games in podcasts. I cover the older games in, lost a level or gained a level videos where I'm talking about the best level in a game. It is very possible that I will cover that on the PS4, but it's the chances are much less because I am here usually to be some kind of service for you guys to have a review the moment the game is asking money for it. That's the most important part. Mick Fleet says, what's the shortest a $60 game can be? Man, it's so crazy how many people had an issue with a game that's 8 to 10 hours or even 12 to 14, but is requiring a certain amount of money, and how they think that a certain amount of time shouldn't allow that. I'll just say this, guys, and this is just me being honest to you guys. I'm not going to hold anything back. You guys aren't me. I can tell you what I think of games I purchase, because every game is purchased regardless if they give me a developer key. Once again, if they do so, I instantly buy it the very same moment and give that away to somebody on Patreon, so that way we don't have that situation where people say, oh, well, you got the game for free. You probably rated it differently. So understanding that I buy the games, I may be different than you, but here's what I believe. I don't have an arbitrary fucking time limit. Just to be sort of gross, 30 minutes of awesome sex, an hour of okay sex, which am I going to choose? Well, in a way, that's sort of the way I think of games. How much of an experience are they? Did I feel, this is how it breaks down, guys. Did I feel like my $60 was worth it? That's really what it goes to. And I'm going to tell you right now, if I walked through my motherfucking life and I had some arbitrary time limit for every single thing and decided I wasn't going to even look at possibly experiencing it because of some arbitrary time limit, I would not experience a great many awesome things in life. I am much more holistic than that. And it doesn't matter. If you're not, whatever. But you have to understand, if you come here, you're coming here understanding fully that I buy every game. And so I am saying what I felt at $60. And I am poor. So if you guys think that I'm rolling in dough, you're fucking wrong. It's one of those situations where I believe that if you restrict yourself consciously like that, there is a very high chance that you will miss out on things. So what you do, and this is the smart thing, guys, this is what you guys, a lot of these people are complaining, we're one step in the right direction, but not taking the next one. You do come to somebody who has spent the money and who has beat it, because you have to beat it. You can't review a game that you haven't beaten. And you basically listen to them and go, okay, maybe it is worth 60, right? Or maybe it's not, whatever. And I get that. That's okay. But but this arbitrary time limit, I just don't believe in. Now, I'm not saying that I wouldn't focus more of my attention on a game that was 30 minutes long asking for $60, and my attention being my ire and angst at the possibility that they were charging 60. I would look at that closer. But you guys should trust me that I would look at it closer, and I would assign a particular amount of focus on what I got out of it. But that's what I do anyway. So anyway, that's just it for me. I'm sorry. That's the way I am. If you don't like it, don't follow me. But I believe that I have to be true. I can't lie to you guys. Even if you guys leave, I'm not going to lie. So, I mean, if I had one subscriber, I wouldn't lie to that one subscriber either. I have to tell you what I experienced, because if I don't, it's going to be this wishy-washy bullshit to where pretty soon nothing makes sense. Red Dead asks, what AAA games are you excited for? What do you think of the recent PS4 exclusives that have been announced? I don't necessarily get more or less excited about AAA than I do anything else. I want to see Star Citizen, because I actually think a lot of what Star Citizen looks like is looking much better. I've always been very happy with what I got from Star Citizen. I've got multiple different play units that I've messed around with, and a game like that, you know, just wouldn't have been made anyway. So I'm very happy with what I'm getting from it. And it's a AAA game. We can call it now, whether you call it independent or not. Very excited for that. Very excited for the expansion for Forza Horizon 3. I actually talked to Microsoft today about getting a review for. I can't wait. I cannot wait for that. You guys know Forza Horizon. That's my shit right there. So what do I think of the recent PS4 exclusives that have been announced? I think of them like I do Last Guardian, Final Fantasy, even though Final Fantasy is not an exclusive. When companies announce exclusives or they announce games, there is not only a better chance of it just being on that system, obviously, right? That makes sense. But there's also a very good chance that it may not come at all. We've seen this. Maybe it's because I've grown up in the industry so long, but I can tell you the line of titles that never came out that were fully announced or came out for the next gen system or what have you is massive, massive. If you get anybody who has a good amount of memory or does a couple Google searches, the number of games that just, you know, have had this kind of issue, like Last Guardian, is pretty crazy. Now, maybe not as long as Last Guardian. Usually they just get canceled or they fall apart. But when it comes down to it, when you look at the industry as a whole, I don't get super excited for exclusives as much as I do for games where it's coming out on every system, because I think there's a slightly higher chance of those games coming out because they're getting money from everybody, or there's the assumption that they will, which allows investors to invest more because the idea of getting more back may actually work. Whether that's true or not, that's just how I go with it. But I don't really find myself getting super excited about PS4 or Xbox One exclusives until they are much closer to release, until I feel like there's almost no chance of them being pulled back. Primordial says, have you played Stalker 1? I'd like to hear your thoughts. Or Stalker. Yeah, so Stalker is one of those games that I get into and then get out of. I've played it multiple times. Its difficulty level is unique, not necessarily hard, not necessarily easy. It just requires a different thought process. And many times that I've entered Stalker, I've never been of that thought process. And I have not done incredibly well. Or the one or two times where I did do a great deal, I sort of got bored with it, to be honest. And that's not me saying it's a bad game. It's me saying that I think Stalker requires a certain something from the player. And if that something isn't there, whether that be a desire to discover new things that are in depths that many games just don't go to, I don't know. But I can only simply speak for myself and say that I think it's awesome for what I've played, but I couldn't say it's an awesome game. Other people would, and I think that they can speak to that at a far higher level than I can. Denzel says, what classic Capcom franchise would I like them to visit? Okay. Even though I like a couple BioWare franchises and a couple classic franchises, I'm not actually a big classic fan. So I would actually say I don't really have any particular one classic Capcom franchise that I would like them to visit. I actually would just like a Dragon's Dogma 2. I would like a true sequel, that kind of thing. I don't really have a classic Capcom franchise, so if you guys in the YouTube comments want to post on yours, that'd be great. And if you do post and one clicks my memory on a franchise that I would like, I will say something and we'll get that in the next podcast. Let's see. Justin says, how do you record gameplay from a PS4? I use both a custom-made box, HDMI into PS3 that I use, or USB 3 that I use that allows me to record directly from any HDMI device. And then when that doesn't work, because sometimes with especially the PS3 and PS4, there's the HDMI handshake stuff. There's some issues, especially with the PS4 Pro even more. But there's a couple issues with the HDMI cables needing to be very, very good, or basically their signal going out is a little bit weaker than the other boxes. And so there's a couple issues. And so sometimes, for reasons unknown, one of my systems will not work to record the PS4. So I use a Elgato HD60. Yeah. And that works fine. The Elgato does. It's just, it requires a little bit more punching of buttons and stuff like that I don't necessarily like to do. So, and it does, the new one does capture lossless. I use the HDMI to USB 3 to capture lossless, so I can actually use software to identify how many frames. Many recorders that you buy, not all, but many recorders that you buy say that they do lossless and they do every frame, and they actually don't. They move them to 60 or they do some finagling. What I use is something that actually gets it a true lossless into the PC. Let's see, and that's because I want to do frame rate counts, by the way. Justin, I think Justin, no, Leeson. Do you play mobile games? Would you review them? You know, I do play mobile games. I play a lot of Android games. I don't have a 3DS anymore. And I never got the other versions of a lot of these mobile titles. Reviewing a mobile title would be very fun and actually would be really, really monetarily, I think, fruitful for my channel. Unfortunately, getting that signal onto the PC and doing it correctly and getting everything working correctly has never been 100% without error for me. And so I have stepped away from trying. I did actually try for a while. I did actually get some setups. I got some software, some hardware, and I was like, this is the way I want to go. I want to make sure I review these as well. Additionally, because of the different models in which mobile titles are done, where free to play is completely, really blown up on that market, the games I would probably review on the mobile would be the ones where it was one purchase and nothing else, and that's even rare, though there are some remakes and stuff. So right now there isn't even a large library that I would want to review, and because of the cost price thing, I would have to do the buy, wait for sale thing at a different scale. So right now, no, I've sort of stepped away from it. Sorry about that. Leeson also asked, what headphones do you recommend at different price? Yeah, okay. I don't. What headphones do you recommend at different price points? I don't do that. And there's multiple reasons why, but let me just try to explain this so people understand. I'm going to be doing some more headphone reviews, and I'm going to talk about that headphone itself. But the situation is this. If I said how many headphones are out there from $100 to $150, there would be easily 200, 300, 400 units. Different versions of things, different platforms, just different companies releasing their stuff. Even more so when you go less than that. When you go more than that, it's a little bit clamped down, but those are more musical headphones, and some people aren't looking for that because they're not necessarily looking to buy for themselves. Like I said, this Christmas, somebody may have put something on their wish list, that kind of thing. Identifying within a price point is very difficult. However, the opposite is not. When I get a headset and I look at it, I can tell you if it is worth $100. I can tell you if I feel it's worth $150. I can tell you if I feel it's worth $200. But that's going a different route. That's going from a point and then spreading out the knowledge versus having just an absolute one person and just having a ton of different units. That is not only impossible for me to test, but the variance there is very high. And that means you might get a unit over here from one company and a unit over here from a completely other company that are within $5 to $6 of each other that are just about the same thing or have offsetting negatives. And I think that can be even more confusing for somebody. So once again, I will be doing reviews for headsets, but it will be from the position of inherent knowledge of that headset and its price point, not the price point in all headsets. 6, where's your Steep review? When I get it done, Steep, if you see any reviews for Steep, I'm sorry, I can't believe that those are real reviews. Steep has a gameplay loop that continues. It's almost like I saw some reviews for State of Decay one time, and the person only had like 18 hours into it. And I'm like, do you actually realize that like 25 hours in, much of the game switches? So you can't even talk about those gameplay loops. You have no fucking clue what you're talking about at this point, especially when somebody would rate it don't get or whatever. You just be like, you have no fucking clue what you're talking about. Steep's the same way. Steep has so much going on there, and I did the beta and all that and played a ton. It requires a lot more than that. It's the way it's actually set up requires a lot more, and it's not just that it's, you know, it's not just that it's multiplayer. It's that the way Ubisoft has set up the entire thing is odd, and the more I played it and the more I saw how many different control schemes there were, because not control schemes, but different control devices. You know, you've got your snowboard and your skis and your wingsuit and all that kind of stuff. I just don't feel that it's fair to you guys to do a review yet. John D, are there differences in performance? Oh, this is, somebody sent me a YouTube comment because it was a good comment and they were like, let's talk about it. And so they sent this. The commenter who didn't send me this themselves, somebody else did, his name is John D, and he says, you know, are there differences in performance for models of consoles like the PS4 and Slim or the Xbox One and the S? And we know that the Xbox One and the S definitely has a performance delta that can show up in games that are throttled via the CPU, because the CPU has a small bump in the S, and we see that if a game is CPU bandwidth bound on the normal Xbox One, we see it get a couple extra, we see, especially when physics are involved, because that's what the CPU is handling, we many times see a couple extra FPS coming out of it. So what does that mean? Yes, I do. I do believe that there's a huge delta. There was a delta introduced, a difference, I'm sorry. There was a difference introduced, a delta, depending on what group you're talking to. That was introduced in the Xbox 360 days when the 4 gig Xbox came out, and many people were reporting vastly different frame rates on that than they were on the other Xbox 360s. What we have is a situation now where you not only have slims, you have different hard drives, you have odd things like clearing the cache on the Xbox One, which absolutely is required for good frame rate on the Xbox One if that cache gets too big. So there is a delta. Now, is it within the hardware? Is it within the software? No one really knows, because, you know, if you install a bunch of things on your Xbox One and one of those apps happens to try to update or something crazy like that happens, and you're playing a game as well and your cache is full, you can actually see some weird frame rates. And the same thing happens for the PS4. You know, I think about it like this. These systems in many games are pushed to their limit because they are a little underpowered. And I think that anything that interrupts them, while the OSs are set up to stop that from happening, I don't believe it always happens. Additionally, we do get memory leaks. Right now, people are looking into the PS4 OG, the original PS4, having a weird issue where the frame rate absolutely dumps to like 3 or 4. And by rebooting the PS4, it seems to work fine, which indicates a bug or a memory leak. So we're talking more right now along the lines of just games that are working fine, but that we see a 1 to 2 frame rate difference between one person's PS4 and another's. Heat can be an issue. It depends on how much of a thermal load the CPU can handle, where it's installed and stuff like that, and how the OS handles that. Does the OS just downclock a little bit, or does it turn off, or does it give a warning? Every system's a little bit different. But it is possible. It is possible. And it's one of those unfortunate things where I don't think it's a massive difference, but I think it's enough. It's one of the reasons when I test a game, I test on an Xbox One and an Xbox One S, both with 2 different hard drives apiece, including an SSD and a hybrid. I test on a PS4 and a PS4 Pro on every single step you can do on a PS4 Pro, which means, outputting a different resolution to see if you get upscaled effects, that kind of thing. So testing is quite difficult on consoles, and that's why I do it. That's why when you look at a console review for me, usually you'll see tested on this, blah, 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 tested on all systems, because I believe that you guys need to know, that where there's issues and where there's not. Elaine asks, what do you think? How do you think this year ended for gamers and gaming? So here's the thing, guys. This is a weird year. We had some of the greatest failures that gaming has probably ever had. You had games that maybe weren't even known to be great but failed, that really were impactful, even if it just is from a business standpoint, like Battleborn or something like that, where a lot of money went into that, a lot of time went into it, and it really didn't do well. But you have No Man's Sky, of course, that did just absolutely horrible. You have Mafia 3 that did somewhat well and sold through well. We don't know the sold to numbers, but sold through well. which means, of course, to the retailers. We don't have two retailers, two people numbers yet. But you have Mafia 3 that, of course, had its issues as well, but people still bought it. This was a fucking weird year. It was a weird year, a year filled with problems, a year filled with strife, a year filled with people being mad, a year filled with companies doing things we don't like. Look at, Deus Ex and its very odd pre-order schemes and all of those kind of things happen. It wasn't the only one. There was like 3 or 4 that had really odd pre-order stuff that was just very distasteful to a lot of gamers, somewhat more to others than maybe myself. It just really depended on what game and how they were offering it. But it also had some fantastic games, guys. It had games like Oxenfree, which I know a lot of people haven't played, that is fantastic. And I would put that game up. I would put that game up against any game as game of the year. And I mean that. And I know that it's not for everybody. That a game doesn't have to be for everybody. That makes no sense. No game is for everybody. But there's a situation where I would put that game up and its unique storytelling up against some of the best games out. But we had a ton of great games. And, we do have Last Guardian after many, many years. We have Final Fantasy after many years. But we have games like Gears after many years that did really well. We have Forza 3 that did really well. It's such an odd year because each system had really good games. And then because of the multi-platform situation, we had a lot of business decisions that were bad. I didn't see a lot of decisions from Sony itself, aside from their shitty customer service, or Microsoft itself, aside from some of their dumbass things they do, that were in anywhere near as bad as the bigger organizations like an Activision or an EA. And that's what was weird this year, is that I actually was pretty happy with what I got from some groups and then very happy with others and vice versa. So it's all over the place. If you ask me, just do I think it ended on a, how do I think it ended is sort of open. So I'm going to say, do I think it ended on a positive note or a negative note? I think it's ultimately ended up on a positive, and here's why. Whether you love them or not, we did see some games that have been in development for 10 fucking years. 8 fucking years, excuse my language. So you have, actually, I think that one's 6. No, it is 8. So you have like Last Guardian, Final Fantasy. They've got released finally. There's this weird, even if you don't like them, there's this moment where you can sort of wash yourself away and say, look, they're out now. We can move on. Like the unknown is now known for those titles, which is awesome to me. However, we did have some issues as well. But I think we had a lot of good games. I think we had a lot of bad games. I would personally say that I think it ended on a positive note. We had a lot of really good games, whether you liked them or not, whether I liked them or not. There's a lot of games out there that a lot of people were impressed with, despite all of the negativity that happened this year. That's what I will probably remember. Do you think 2017 will top it? I do. 2017, I can't even talk about it. Oh, whoops. I hit my background. I got so excited. 2017 has amazing stuff coming that isn't just about the consoles or the PCs. It's displays, obviously. 2017, boom, there's going to be some amazing stuff coming that you guys will not even, it's awesome. So 2017, even if only 1 or 2 of those come true that I know about, we are in for a awesome year. And that doesn't even include the games. That are coming. It doesn't include the possibility of Scorpio coming and upsetting even more of the universe. Hopefully Scorpio won't have to jumping into your settings and changing around random things to see what level of service you get on your game. It's like go in, turn it to 1080p or 4K, blah, blah, blah. Hopefully that'll all be automatic, but we'll see. And hopefully it'll be more powerful and we won't see the issues that we've seen with the PS4 Pro. That's one of my big worries because I moved forward to the PS4 Pro, and it has really been it's been such a positive and such a negative. It's really hard to even rate that system because you never want to pay $400 for anything that ever even once performs less than something prior to it, and so that is really disappointing. But then at the same time, some games you see some really incredible improvements. So. Let's see. Nerdy Lena says, where do you see yourself in 5 years? So I have a 5-year plan. So actually in 3 years is what I'll give you because my 5-year plan started the day I started the channel. Where do I see myself in 5 years? If it were me, I would see myself having extended the conversation of games to a slightly different position. And I don't mean adjusting all of games. I'm not that egotistical. I'm one person. But what I mean is to where some people would have taken how I talk about games, taken about sound, music, and voice, and maybe we see it just a little bit more in some other people's reviews or coverage of games. You know, I talked to Austin Winter, I talked to Jesse Harlan, and a couple composers you're going to see some reviews popping up for in the next couple days, maybe week, where they still aren't being mentioned as much. We have the, you know, voice actor union, you know, their strike and all of those situations there, where I would like to escalate some of that to where there's a more even ground, and certainly in no way, shape, or form deballing anybody else or devaluing them. I mean, developers, you know, as people have said, developers do all the work. They do. They're the ones who write the script, or, you know, or the people who create the game create the script for the voice actors to use, or create the game world for the composer to actually create for. But I think that we still see a really weird offset there where we don't talk about it as much. So I see myself in 3 years being pretty happy with at least some of the channels I know who are near me talking a little bit more about this stuff. You know, you've got somebody like Brian from Bad Seed Tech, who, you know, we talked about HDR because he didn't know about HDR. We talked about it, and now he's out there, you know, just like me. He's out there talking about HDR. And this is not to take anything away from him. I'm just saying how I want things to grow, where he's now talking about HDR and he's now studying those things. And he's done the same thing for me, where like we've done a podcast and he's talked about some tech I wasn't aware of or some peripheral. And I'm like, oh shit, I got to go check that out. That's the kind of stuff I want. I want also a bigger team of YouTubers that sort of, I wouldn't say collaborate around me, because I don't necessarily like the word collaboration because it sounds more business-like than I would like it. Maddie comes on the channel to talk about games, right? Skilled used to come on the channel to talk about games. Go Burns he comes on the channel to talk about games. Dean comes on the channel to talk about games. That's what I want. I want a nice, like-minded group around me, and that would make me really happy. Financially, if that might be what you're asking, I would at least hope to be making a living. So that's where I see myself in 5 years. But it's more important to me that games coverage has adjusted slightly, and I can't wait to see if that happens. Go Burns, of course, the next person on this list, says, are publishers pumping out remasters instead of backwards compatible games? And okay, so I'm going to explain a technical thing, and then I'm going to give you my answer. And the technical situation I'm going to discuss does not negate the answer. It's just information for you and how you understand how I come to my answer. Sometimes a backwards compatible game, and looking at the technology in which it will be played on, which is a locked Xbox One. PS Now is a little different, so we're going to talk just for a second about a console where it's a hard console and it has a very specific amount of power. There is a difference sometimes with an emulated system within a actual piece of hardware. And there is an overhead that you are losing when you take something and emulate it versus getting something native or remastered on a system. Now, the overhead can be different. I don't think Microsoft has ever said what it is, but we do know that they have fooled the Xbox 360 emulator to thinking it's actually inside an Xbox One, so much so that they have issues with a couple peripherals, which really indicates that they've done a very good job fooling the Xbox 360 into believing it's a real entity. That emulator within the Xbox 360 doesn't do any fancy stuff. It literally believes it's a hardware unit. So there is a possibility that somebody who wants to do a backwards compatible game will look at it and go, I actually can't do that because I don't have the bandwidth I need to do. So I need to put it on the native system and run it natively so that I can get a little bit more out of the eSRAM, or so that I can get a little bit more out of this or that. Maybe there's a little bit of clock speed you lose. Additionally, there is the situation where we have seen some games that could have had remastered, Medal of Honor Airborne, that haven't been. We see actually a good number of games that have come out recently on backwards compatible, the backwards compatible system that could have been remasters and aren't. And that was shocking to me. So I don't like the fact that we're getting a ton of remasters. You guys know this. I'm not a big fan of remasters, but at the same time, I do see the technicalities behind it, and I don't think that everyone created has purely been because of some nefarious reason. And I think that that's actually one of the problems with gamers is paranoia and conspiracy don't mean somebody's not trying to screw you over, but it also does not mean, logically, that everybody is trying. And I think that that's important for us as adults to discuss. And the quicker we close ourselves off to that discussion, close ourselves off to the possibility, the quicker that we look like fools. I mean, and that's the way it is. It looks foolish. It looks absolutely foolish. So that's it for the questions that I got. Those are some really good questions. I definitely appreciate it. This has gone for, looks like 34 minutes. I do want to just give a shout out and say, this year, I've already did my thank you video, but this year I thanked, the YouTubers, Maddie, Dean, Skilled, who no longer does stuff, Go Burns, Brian from Bad Seed Tech, Joker, who's just hilarious. I love that guy. It's been one of those situations where it's been great, but I do want to thank users and the subscribers and those who've left even, because I see in my metrics that people leave. And that's something that when I was starting out, somebody warned me about. They're like, dude, don't let the people leaving. And this isn't the bug people are talking about in YouTube. I'm talking about true people leaving, because sometimes people have emailed me and said, I can't agree with you anymore, blah, blah, blah. Thanks anyway. I don't really care if you don't agree with me anymore and you leave, because I feel that as a human, you probably remember conversations, and those conversations will, there's a chance that one or two of your next conversations or one or two of your next thoughts about a game might be colored slightly by something I said, hopefully in a positive note. And I think that that's awesome. And I think that the more we can do that, the more we can call into question bad coverage, the more we can call into question what we get. But also the more we can call into question each person's response to those situations is cool. It offers sort of a medium ground. It offers a leveling of the emotional back and forth and the fucking ratcheting up of tensions that we always see. Sometimes to the point to where some of us are going, why are people freaking out about this? And you really feel that it's almost just something they're freaking out about because they didn't freak out about the three other things. And this is their breaking point. This is the straw that broke the digital camel's back. So I just want to thank anybody who's come and gone. And, the people who've gone will never see this. So whatever, I still get to thank them. I'm in control. I think that it's amazing. I think that this has been a spectacular year for games as a whole, and also a terrible one. But that's sort of what makes it a year I'm going to remember for a long time. And I'm just going to shout out some game names that I think are amazing right now that maybe you're newer to the channel and will not have seen. Like Life is Strange, like Oxenfree, Bug Catcher. Yeah, Bug Butcher. Sorry, Bug Butcher is fantastic. Bug Butcher is just such a unique game. Let's see, what are some other games? I'm actually in my head going down the list of games I've reviewed. Games that are terrible and you should never check out is that Cycling Manager. 7 Days to Die console version? Negative. Don't check that out. But it's been a great year, and we've had these Ori and the Blind Forest. We've had some of these indie games that have really surprised me. We've had games that no one agrees but me and the people who've actually played it later on games that have been amazing. I absolutely feel that my enjoyment of HUD-less games was developed this year. Games like Primal, and I know that people have an issue with Far Cry, but one thing I have to say, and I think I need to make it clear. When I review games, I review them for two different demographics. I review them for the people who are new to it, and I review them for the people who are not. And I think a lot of people get really confused by that. I can't review What We Hope, and I can't review every hatred and every long book of woe that you may have about games. I can't. It's not realistic, nor should it ever be. But I can at least look at that as a situation when I come up to my final recommendation. But additionally, I have to look at the other side. I have to look at people that, like Jill, a girl that she just emailed me a couple days ago, and she's like, and I say girl, sorry, she's only like 14, but she emailed and she's like, she's going to ask her parents for a video game system this year. And she was like, which of the consoles, because it's a console system, should I get? Are there adult stuff so that my mom and dad can turn off particular things that they don't want me to watch, blah, blah, blah. And it was actually a very good email for someone that young, very, very well written. And I was reading it just going like, this is awesome. It's like somebody reaching out and getting this information and sort of going from that point on and understanding that this is their first day. This will be their first day in gaming on the 25th. Think about it this way, guys. On the 25th and 24th of this year in December, the number of new gamers because of Christmas, is going to dramatically increase. And all I want is for people to be a little bit more thoughtful that while we may hate a sequel, or we may hate a game that just doesn't feel completely new to us, it doesn't make it a bad game. And it doesn't make it a game that doesn't have an audience, and a audience that has the absolute right to enjoy it and play it. And I think that a lot of gamers like to remove other people's rights, whether we admit it or not. You know, you get pissy and you start saying like anybody who likes this or likes that is this or that, and or dislikes it. And you have a situation where people really like to remove other people's rights. But when we look at this situation, man, we look at, you know, thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of new gamers created on the 24th and 25th. And if you can find a cooler thing, I would like to know what it is, because to me, there is something fucking fantastic about the thought of this. It is almost cooler than Christmas itself. The idea that I'm going to go to sleep on the 24th and wake up on the 25th, and we will have a new legion of gamers ready to jump into titles is fucking fantastic. I can't even think of something cooler. The idea that we will wake up and there will be hundreds of thousands of more people to engage in conversation with and talk about new games and get into the gaming process is the coolest thing ever. It's fantastic. And I think that people forget that. So anyway, that's it for me. I hope you guys like this podcast and the Q&A. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Maybe check out Twitter or Patreon, as I always say. Also, remember, I have the affiliate links, the Amazon affiliate links. If you decide you want to get a game, even though I rated, never touch, you can use the affiliate link. It does help the channel if you can't use Patreon or something like that. If you dislike the video, give it a thumbs down. Peace out and enjoy the rest of your week.